Hello, welcome to The Addict's Advocate, a podcast geared towards the suffering addict and those in recovery. This podcast does not provide any medical advice. No material on this podcast is intended to be substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare professional with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment and before undertaking a new healthcare regimen. And never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast. Enjoy the show. Good evening and welcome to The Addict's Advocate, podcast geared towards recovering individuals from addiction as well as the suffering addict. I get some questions from now and then about as to why I've chosen to do this. And to be honest, when I was going through a recovery program, I was scared, first of all, and just making the admission that I had an issue. I also didn't feel like I had anybody in my corner that was there understanding me, understanding my struggle. And what I found was that through the in-treatment services that I attended, as well as the intensive outpatient services I attended, that there were a lot of people that were sharing the similar struggles, and there was a camaraderie, number one. There was a sense of community, and there was also just people that I was able to talk to freely and openly about all the issues that I had. And so that's the reason why this podcast has been developed. It's purely to help those that are maybe questioning if they have an addiction issue, and or those that recognize that, they need to stop using their substance of choice, or they're in recovery and they just want to feel like they're not alone. Maybe the meetings that are offered to them don't jive with them, but they want to feel like they're not alone in this struggle. So that is the main reason as to why I'm doing this. And with that, I'm very excited because I have a good friend of mine, Mason. Mason is here tonight sharing his story, amongst other things. And I was able to meet him roughly about 4 months ago, and him and I have formed a strong bond. I definitely consider him a friend, and I'm thankful that he was able to join us tonight. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm glad to be a part of what you're doing.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I think the best thing to do is always to just kind of start off, maybe give the listeners a little background on yourself. How did you end up getting to the point of needing to seek help?
It's a long story. At this point in my life, at 39 years old, substance abuse has been more a part of my life than it hasn't, honestly. It started at a young age and manifested into something that was ugly, and I saw it a long time ago and still continued to ride it out for quite some time. But finding help has been fantastic.
Did you think that there was anything that really kind of put you over the edge? Because obviously, like with addiction, right? We'll go for a long time and just thinking that we're doing what everybody else is doing. We're living life. We're having good times. Was there a change in that for you that caused you to sit there and go, you know what, this is just too much? Did you?
Most definitely. It's just the unsustainability. Like, I was feeling my body just deteriorating again. Because before I even met you, I had dealt with alcoholism to the point where I was having withdrawal seizures on the regular.
Oh, jeez.
From I'd say probably 27 to 30, I was having seizures constantly. And it got to the point where I wasn't taking care of it because I was like you said, there's a lot of fear in it, and even just that, I stopped even going to the hospital because I was afraid they were going to take my license. So how I looked at it and how I valued what was at risk was actually very obscure for what I was really in danger for, which is my life.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I can imagine that. If you play, the pros and the cons of going and seeking an admission of help, and at that point, right, you get labeled in a sense, right? And so,
yeah.
How do you navigate that if you've never done it, if you've never truly looked at the fact that there was a change needing to be made?
And I had too,
Yeah.
I had the pleasure of meeting you in inpatient treatment, but like 12 years before that, I had admitted myself into a similar facility that's up north closer to me.
Yeah.
And, I paid out of pocket for myself, but I just did not take it serious. I
Yeah.
just thought that I still had everything under control. It was
Yeah.
almost kind of like I was just appeasing people, like I was noticing that people were noticing that I had a problem.
Yeah.
But at the time, like up north where I live here, I was living out in the mountains, and it was a completely different lifestyle. Like at that point in time, like I was just growing weed and no one cared what I did. So it was also really easy for me to continue to hide my addiction after putting myself through treatment. Like when I got released, I drank beer on my way home
Wow.
driving,
Yeah.
which is embarrassing, like when I look back at it now, like not only embarrassing for me, but just like, I mean, why even put on the facade? So
Yeah.
it's pretty interesting that it took me so much longer. I mean, and it really was the point of just my body deteriorating that really made me realize that I just cannot keep this up.
Yeah. There's a notion where you go, I keep this up, I'm going to end up in a grave, and yet at the
Hmm.
same time, for some reason, I can't stop on my own, right?
Yeah.
I need, I need, I need somebody else to show me the way because I've obviously
Hmm.
tried this before. I've either felt like I had control of it, or I was just, doing what was supposed to be done, from other people's perspectives, and yet, and I think part of it is that when we quit, if there's no sense of happiness, there's no mental health change, there's nothing that kind of reinvigorates us with life. We're going to end up just kind of going back to what we did.
Hmm. And
Um,
doing it
so
cold turkey, there's nothing to fall back on. There's no one there for you.
yeah,
Like you need to learn the ways of like, you gotta like it sounds, cliche, but like they say, you gotta build the tools.
right. You have to recognize your triggers, right? You
Hmm.
have to, yeah, find a verb in life, right? And I know that there's such a mental aspect that people don't realize. The things that I've learned just in regards to dopamine receptors and what addiction does to you, and just trying to people want to feel good or feel better than the state that they're being, and they find that all of a sudden it's only the substance use that gets them back to a normal level sort of feeling, right?
Hmm.
And I know that trauma is a big part of that as well, because trauma can change dopamine receptors and make it more difficult just to feel okay, if not happy.
Hmm.
Um, how has your family responded to your efforts to get and stay clean?
Fantastically.
Yeah.
Like I had a great childhood, like no real trauma in that sense, but like I did it to myself just well. And, like I was never an outcast from my family due to my addictions. I was always a welcomed part, but like I mentioned to you right before we started, like I went to my nephew's birthday party today. And like just to be able to be there and like emotionally there and a
Hmm.
part of it, like I would go to things like that in the past, but like I just always had this part of me in the back of my mind. I was like, I gotta get out of here. And it's been so fantastic to be a stable, good part of my family. That everyone has reacted fantastically. Like absolutely nothing but proud of me. And it feels great.
That's awesome, man. I understand that feeling too, because there's definitely you're there, but you're checked out, right? When
Hmm.
when you're constantly chasing a high, and I think that there's a fear of feeling again, right? When we
Hmm.
use, it gets rid of our feelings, except for the feeling that we're trying to control through substance use. So there's what happens when I become this sober, raw person again? I'm gonna have to feel, and sometimes the feelings aren't great feelings. And I think that there's a fear in doing that. And for me, it's the one thing that's happened is that I was no longer sitting on a level of either pure bliss because I was loaded or pure despair because I wasn't. I found this equilibrium, this middle part of my life where it was like, I'm okay again. I'm just okay. And that's good. I'm not ruminating over stuff. I'm not, melancholy. I'm not anxious. And, a lot of that for me too also was just obviously the medical help that I received, from a mental health perspective to kind of address the things that I was managing, right, through substance use. Um, what has been valuable to you in your rehabilitation education? What things do you still carry with you and still think about when it comes to the classes, the treatment that you received?
Um, I mean, honestly, just the introspection into myself
Mm,
throughout the treatment is really what has given me the forefront to keep going in any direction that I'm going on. Just the ability to step back and take things in, listen to what people are having to say instead of reacting to what people are having to say. Just the real simple basics. And like, the more I've relied on that, the more I feel like everything else is just kind of laid into place.
mm, that's nice. Yeah, it's definitely yeah, it's actually using your brain again in a sense, right? As
Hmm.
weird versus being just drugged up and saying what you want or just reacting and being in your own mind, right?
Yeah.
What struggles have you found where you've been trying to maintain your sobriety? Have you ran into big triggers that have made you anxious for the rest of the day? Have you had the
I would have
urge?
to, I would have to say anxiety in itself. I
Yeah,
didn't even realize that I had anxiety until getting sober.
right.
And I mostly only have it socially, which is also odd for me because I've always been a social person. So like now in social settings, like, I mean, thank God for everything that I've learned in treatment because like there's no getting away from those situations. It's you gotta maintain and figure them out. But yeah, I mean, just anxiety has been a tough one. But I definitely feel as though I have the tools to get through it, and I don't feel like it's holding me back at this point. But the first couple of months of coming home were pretty rough on that note. I had a lot of depression, like which led to me secluding, even though I wasn't drinking. I was still just like real down on myself for probably 2 months, and like I'm glad that I stuck with programs because I easily could have lost course right there.
Right. That's yeah, I mean those are all the post-acute withdrawal symptoms, right? When you have to deal
Exactly.
with the first 6 months to 2 years, right? While the
Hmm.
brain's trying to recalibrate itself and trying to get all those dopamine receptors back to where they were. And
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, I had a therapist say to me that if you don't feel horrible going through detox for the first couple of months and everything else, he goes, you're not, something's not right because you
Yeah.
should. Your brain's
Yeah.
definitely. Um, what sort of routine or daily habits have you found that have helped you?
um, Art has been a major factor.
Very cool.
Like that's actually like because sleep has been a major thing for me my entire life too. Like there was points in my alcoholism that I had convinced myself that I was drinking to be able to sleep, which is insane now that I am able to step back from it and look at it. It is not helping at all. But yeah, I mean just art and physical fitness, working out, and family, man. Like it's just been really great to connect so solidly with family again.
Yeah. It's nice when it's no longer just trying to get your booze or trying to get your next smoke right after work and everything.
Hmm.
I got all this time now to do stuff again, right?
Yeah.
And so you get to kind of go after your hobbies and kind of rediscover yourself, right?
Hmm.
Um, so obviously your sober community, has anybody at your workplace understood what you went through, or is it purely just family that's understanding of what you went through?
No, it's been welcomed all around. Like, luckily, my full-time job, I work for the Office of Education, and like actually, my boss has gone through similar battles of his own in the past. So it was when I came back, I was welcomed with open arms. It was everyone was happy for me, and honestly, my work ethic has always been impeccable, but it's apparent even to me that my work is better now, you know. So it's a win-win.
That's great. Do you have any aspirations for maybe the next level in your career, or are you still just enjoying what you're doing?
Um, yeah, I mean, honestly, like that's my evening job. I do that from 3 to 11. I s- I also work construction before that, like five
Okay.
to six hours a day. So
Okay.
that's also been an interesting aspect in recovery. Is a lot of people in recovery like that are concerned for me think that like I'm overworking myself, but I actually find a lot of pleasure in construction. I like building, and it's
Mhm.
ever changing. So like the first half of my day is always different. And then I go to my second job, which is the same every day.
Okay.
But without that job, I wouldn't have had the insurance I had to get into recovery. So
Understand.
I work a lot, but I feel as though like I don't overwork myself anymore. Like I've found the ability to say no to jobs. Like if I'm overextending myself, I won't do it.
That's good. And I guess if you find something that you love, right, you're not really working. It's all as a labor of love, right?
Exactly.
Anything that like is like surprised you with your sobriety, like you weren't expecting, you know, whatever it may be.
Yeah. I mean, back to the beginning, there was lots of fear in it, man. Like I was so scared to even reach out for help, but then when I got it, like when I was in an inpatient situation, like I was trying to like write and make art and stuff, and I just couldn't. And I was very scared that like those things weren't going to come back. But
Got it.
just like work, they came back tenfold.
Mm.
You just got to give it that time and be patient, and everything ends up getting better.
Yeah,
And it's
I go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I I remember like when you and I were in the throes of going through detox and everything. It's at least it was nice to to wake up in the morning feeling horrible and looking at your 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 compatriot, if you will, that's
Mhm.
sitting in the same situation as you are,
Yeah.
and going, I feel just as bad, and so you kind of go, well, at least we're all feeling shitty together, right?
Yeah, now it's group.
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah, for sure. If you came across someone that you knew was struggling with addiction, and let's say they were aware of it, what sort of advice would you give them if they were looking to try to free the chains, but they just didn't even know where to start? I mean, like, for example, somebody goes, well, I've tried to stop, right? And I can only last a couple of weeks and then I start again. What would you say to somebody like that?
Well, there's never any reason to stop trying.
Yeah.
And honestly, like the best advice I could give on that note is to just get over the fear because it is scary. Like like where I live, there's nothing like where we were in treatment. Like I had to drive hundreds of miles to get there.
Yeah.
And just that was enough to make it super scary, like thank God I have good friends.
Yeah.
Like I was blessed enough to where like once I was serious about it, one of my closest friends noticed that I was serious about it to the point where he was just like, "Send me a picture of your insurance card." And then he texted me a list of people that would take me. And the first phone call I made landed me where I met you. It was
Wow.
that easy. Like I
Wow.
made one phone call, I got connected from one person to another, and I was there 2 days later.
Wow. Yeah, I think when it's meant to be, right, it all kind of lines up. Um, wow. So you've got at least 100, 140, 150 days now?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's wow.
I checked in on August 15th.
Wow. Yeah, so I was like the 22nd or so, the 24th maybe. Um, yeah, no, it's a beautiful thing, and
It really is.
I feel for those that are, that have continued down the rabbit hole to the point where, they're homeless, they're constantly looking for a fix,
Hmm.
and if if they just understood that, it's not their fault, the way that this has gotten to be the point that it is, and
Yeah.
you're dealing with a biological chemical problem right in the brain, and I think that there's you know there needs to be that notion of hope, um, and people can't see, again, because when you're drugged up and you're depressed and everything, there's no gravity, no weight to anything in your life,
Well,
right?
you bury your head further and further in the sand.
Yeah,
It just feels more and more lonely. Like I felt so alone for
yeah,
so many years.
yeah.
But
No, I hear you, and that's I think one of the strongest realities about it all is that most that are dealing with it are ashamed, they're embarrassed, they feel
mhm.
guilty, they feel like they're weak individuals, right? That don't know how they got themselves into this mess, and now they don't know how to get themselves out of this mess.
Mhm.
And that's the thing that I really want people to understand is that it's not your fault, and there are ways to get better, and you're going to meet a whole new world of people that you ultimately call friends, and life's gonna get better. It really will. And
And it
there's
really does.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, go ahead. Do you
Oh,
have
I was
anything
just
else?
gonna say too, like, I mean, you met me as an alcoholic. Like, I'm amazed that that's really what kept a hold of me. Is like, like I said, I never get really told my story, and it's pretty crazy. Like, I did all kinds of drugs at a very young age, which I think also led to a lot of my like anxiety and depression and stuff at this point.
Yeah.
It's pretty overwhelming when you look at it as a whole.
Yeah, and it's not like we can get our clocks reset right in such a short period of time if we've been dealing with decades of issues and abuse, right?
Mm.
And so I know we have to give ourselves grace and you know let off some of that pressure and know that each day is going to be getting towards that better point in your life, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Any final gems of wisdom to share? Things that you feel like you
Um,
want to talk about?
I would say, don't be afraid. Reach out. The help is there, and it does get better. And if you're in a point to where you've already started and it feels like it's not going to, it will. You just got to stick with it and enjoy your family and be creative in any way you can.
Yeah.
Just if you have any sort of creativity to take your time up with, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's definitely a need to fill that void, right? If it's no longer under a state of some sort of substance, right? It's
Hmm.
that you have all this free time, and yeah, it's a it's taking care of yourself. It's discovering that whole new you, which should be exciting for people. At least I'd hope so. Um,
I agree. And even if it doesn't feel exciting, just give it a chance because
yeah,
it will get exciting.
yeah,
You have a whole nother chance at life.
yeah, yeah. I think that's awesome, my man. Hey, Mason, you know what, buddy? I appreciate your time this evening.
Yeah,
And we'll have you as you continue on this journey. Love to have you back.
most
And
definitely.
if you're journaling or keeping yourself notes and of new revelations and stuff, I'd love to hear about them. Soon. And yeah, keep up the good work, my man. And
Yeah,
with that, I'd like to again just thank you, and you have a good night. Okay?
real quick before you go,
Yes, sir.
I am putting together an art show this summer if you want to come up and check it out.
Awesome, awesome. That sounds like a plan. We'll have to get it together. We have to do some
Right on.
advertising. All right, buddy. You have a good night. Okay?
You too. Thank you.
Sure. Bye bye.